Light the beam, because it's time for Nerdy for 30, podcast where we talk about nerdy-ish movies for 30-ish minutes. My name is Kevin Bauer, aka the Critic's Choice. With me, as always, is the People's Champ, Tim Keck. And today, we are talking about the OG X-Men movie from like the year 2000.
Pre 9/11.
Pre 9/11, yeah. It was a simpler time back then, but not a simpler movie. This is a movie that tackles a lot of themes, and I would say does so exceedingly well.
Yeah, I feel like we've been on a burner of okay movies, and we decided, what if we just watch something good? It's been a long time since I've watched this movie. This is a great movie. This is really solid. It's just good. It's tight, It's like an hour 44, and they get, I mean, it moves. They hit everything. There's depth if you're looking for it. There's all this like metaphor and symbolism and all the stuff they're doing. I mean, we just talked about Rebel Moon and how they have no idea how to build a team. I mean, this movie did the exact opposite. I love all of these characters. The casting is fantastic. I understand what everybody wants and what people care about and how everyone gets along. And it's just great. This is an amazing movie. And what an introduction to the X-Men. One of my favorite Marvel groups of all time. It's incredible. What an amazing introduction to these guys.
It's terrific, dude. They keep it small. This is a tight team. And then you have Spider-Man come out right after that. Oh my God. Everybody gives a lot of credit to Iron Man. There was a lot of shit, granted, that came out between like Spider-Man and Iron Man, but holy shit. Like the 3-hit combo of Blade, then X-Men, then Spider-Man, that explains why we are where we are today.
Phenomenal footing. And you're right, they're not like coordinating or anything. They're just independently 3 killer movies, and I love it. I wanted to talk about the beginning of the movie because this thing gets off to an incredible start immediately. Like right away, this movie's good. It opens with Magneto as a kid during the Holocaust in a concentration camp. He's separated from his family. His powers come to life. He's pulling the fence. And that scene ends on a shot of this like warped, like bent fence that he's been pulling at and struggling with. It's beautiful. I think then we go to the title. Then immediately we go to Rogue. And Rogue is discovering that she has powers because she's kissing a guy and he gets sick, has a seizure because of her powers. She is terrified and scared and she screams and she's horrified. Then we immediately cut to the government debating what to do about these people and how dangerous they all are and how they are all weapons. And Jean Grey's making the argument that like they're human beings, they deserve to live. And the government's like, no, we need to know who they are. We need to know what they can do. We need to be able to control everything. And this is all being watched by the duality of Professor X and Magneto, who then have a wonderful face-to-face. Immediately, the symbol of good and the symbol of quote-unquote evil in this movie are face-to-face. And you realize that both of them are right. And both of them are a little wrong, and both of them are a little right. And this is a shades of gray, very complicated issue. You understand where both of them are coming from, more so Magneto than Professor Xavier. I mean, they're in shadows on this bridge. It's beautiful. And I think then we go right into introducing Wolverine, which is crazy. So it's like boom, 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 boom. Incredible. That first chunk, like with Professor X Magneto, is like 5 minutes into the movie. That's like 5-10 minutes of the movie. And right away, we have so much symbolism, so much character development. I mean, it's beautiful. I was honestly shocked. I mean, all this stuff, too, is so relevant today. You'd think we would be past some of this stuff, but really any marginalized group or group of people that's been discriminated against can look at the X-Men and say and see their own experience mirrored back at them. I mean, this is a group of people that the government is building a what do they call it? Like a straw man for, and just using them as a political talking point and blaming them for all this stuff. And they're just people. They're just human beings who are doing the best they can and doing what they can in their circumstances. And they don't all get to choose what happens to them. Things just happen to them. And they're all, everyone's people in this. Everyone's human, and it's great. Kevin, it's such a good, complicated issue that they are presenting all the sides of immediately, instantly. This is our first
Dude.
impression of the X-Men in film, and that's it. They told us everything.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's incredible, Tim. They do the gold standard of what I love, which is slipping the audience like a great lesson in the form of great entertainment. The whole thing with Senator Kelly being given mutant powers and then landing in the X-Men's infirmary and telling Storm, I wanted to go to a hospital, but I didn't know if they would help me because I'm a mutant, and have to eat that crow and have to empathize with that perspective. And the audience doesn't feel like they're being hit over the head with anything because they're watching him turn into a jellyfish and people are shooting lightning out of their hands. And suddenly we are hitting a lot of people in this audience. I mean, millions of people saw these movies. A lot of people love the X-Men movies, some of whom may still be bigots, but definitely were bigots going in. And so suddenly it's like you got somebody rooting for these characters and understanding what a character is going through that they otherwise wouldn't have. And that's incredible. Like, it's wild. I am so scared of what's going to happen to the X-Men under the current state of the MCU because they have not shown any ability to handle anything even remotely as nuanced as this.
I disagree. I think the MCU can do a good job, but we also already saw the X-Men, like this X-Men franchise, fall off, right?
Yeah,
like X3 is pretty terrible. X2 is good, and then
X2,
the First Class movies are interesting.
Yeah, First Class movies are fun. Days of Future Past is very fun. But
and we have all these Wolverine movies that are rough.
Like, yeah,
there's some real stinkers in there.
The truly great X-Men movies are probably this, Logan, maybe Days of Future Past, and then Deadpool. Are we lumping Deadpool in here? Deadpool feels like its own thing.
I mean, X2 is really good. I mean, we should do X2 on the pod. I remember liking it more at the time.
Yeah, I want to rewatch it. Yeah, I remember thinking it was incredible, but I don't know if that's because there's more of the action or if that's because there's more of the politics, basically.
See, I remember as a kid too, not picking up on any of this. I was so bored during the Senator Kelly parts. I hated Senator Kelly because he was the one person I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, why are we wasting our time with this old man? It's just an old guy and he turns into a blob. He doesn't even get like superpowers. So why do we care about him? And then as an adult, I'm like, this is incredible. He's great. I mean, it makes sense. He's the real villain in this story. And yeah, it's also an interesting way with the powers. If we're talking about, marginalized groups of people or people who've been discriminated against, really, the people discriminating against them don't often have the opportunity to become the people they're discriminating against.
Sure. Yeah. I will say the one exception is I heard somebody who was like a advocate for, I guess, just more accessibility, was saying that the disabled population is the largest, the largest marginalized group that anyone could become a member of at any point in time.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense too.
But I mean, I know
with that veiled threat from Kevin, want you to know, Tim, Kevin, I want you to know personally, you could be a member of the handicapped group at any moment. I'd rather
think about it constantly.
Yeah. And yeah, we have the Blob, and Rogue in this is great. She's a great character. Her power is absolutely useless. And it sucks so bad. And I remember in the other movies, they try to make her an X-Men. And it's like, why? Why do you need this woman who actively hurts other people so that she can steal their power for a little bit? Well, we already have someone who has that power. We don't need another person. Like, she shouldn't be an X-Men in this context. It's very silly, but she is the perfect companion for Hugh Jackman and for Wolverine.
Mm.
Do you remember Wolverine and Rogue like really hitting it off in the comics? Because I was thinking of Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. That was, I feel
Oh
like,
yeah.
my initial, the first X-Men run, or when they introduced the new team in like 100. And then going forward, Wolverine and Kitty Pryde had like a father-daughter relationship where he's distant. And they've just continued to do that with like X-23. I mean, Wolverine is the perfect person to give like a child to, or like someone who needs protecting, who can also break through his hard exterior. And it's one of the reasons why he's such a lovable character. The intro to Wolverine in this is as close to perfect as you can get, right? Isn't
It's
it
unreal, dude. It is
awesome?
unreal. It hits everything. It is so sick. Um, God damn, dude. Yeah, you're 100% right. He's like a mentor for Shadowcat for a while. He teaches her, I believe he teaches her the ways of the ninja in the comics. Um, and I think in this one, because they had weirdly, I forgot that they had like a little Shadowcat cameo in this movie. They had her in it. I think they needed to use Rogue because they needed somebody whose powers were more traumatic. You know,
Oh, it's
realizing you can
100% the
phase through
choice.
stuff. Yeah. And it does play extremely well. I was trying to remember. I'm glad, obviously, they didn't do anything. It would be extremely strange with this dynamic. But I was trying to remember if like Rogue and Wolverine have ever dated in the comics, because it does feel like a certain there is definitely like a subset of mutants in the comics that are traumatized by their powers, and there's a
Mhm.
palpable jealousy in place between them and any of the mutants who have like really wonderful powers. Like Storm's power is pretty rad. So like,
Yeah. Storm is probably the only one, and honestly, Iceman are like the only ones that are like, oh no, this is just a positive.
yeah,
This is just making my life better.
sure. And I remember that's part
Yeah.
of the conversation in X-Men 3 when Rogue wants to get the cure and then Storm's like, they can't cure us. And it's like, all right, that's cool. You can make clouds.
That's cool, Halle Berry. You can just fly and shoot
Yeah.
lightning at people. There are zero cons to this. Zero cons. Rogue, yeah, will never be able to physically touch someone ever. The most basic of human needs is inaccessible to her. Cyclops can't view the world without putting on glasses, because if he ever just looks at someone with his regular eyes, he will kill them. Jean Grey is doing this like telepathy, telekinetic thing, but telepathy's got to be hell, right? We know it's like if you all of a sudden you can hear every single person's thoughts, crazy. There's just there's just so much downside. Wolverine's is very cool, and his power set is very neat, and it's very small potatoes compared to a lot of the stuff in the MCU.
Mhm.
But the way it's presented in the bar, him versus just some guys at the bar, he is a god to them. He
Yeah.
is, it's all relative. Like once you bring the story small, and him he gets into a car accident, like his truck hits a tree and he goes flying out. He doesn't wear a seatbelt. And it's like, why would he wear a seatbelt? What's the worst that could happen to him? But but for us, that would be dead, instant dead. And he doesn't care. He's just not afraid of dying. He's not afraid of death. He just does stuff. And it's great. It's crazy. Him pulling the claws out was like the coolest thing. The
Oh,
first time I
it
saw
looks
this,
amazing.
and the third one comes sliding out towards that guy's neck.
Yeah.
Incredible. Looked
You
so
see that
good.
like skin flap part on his
Yeah, it like
knuckle.
breaks
And then
out.
when Rogue asks him, does it hurt? And he says, every time. He is
Yes.
such a badass. It's incredible.
God, it's so good. He's just so cool, man. And then he even makes a joke calling Professor Xavier Wheels. I can't believe that happened in the movie. I feel like that's just been a
Yeah.
joke that people have like made, crassly about Professor Xavier. But then for him to call him Wheels in the movie, I was like, oh, okay, this is like self-aware too. They like know what we're doing. They're like, this is kind of crazy. It is
This
crazy.
movie, it's got a pretty wicked sense of humor. I wrote down a couple
Yes.
jokes that were made and I loved them. One of them, a little esoteric. Storm, you know what happens to a toad when it gets struck by lightning? Same thing that happens to everything else.
I was going to ask you about this because I saw some debate online. Is that a great line or is it the worst line of all time?
I
What side are you
think
on?
I'm on the side of I think it's a realistic line because it feels like she's amped up on adrenaline and she's kind of trying to be cocky, but she doesn't necessarily have the ability to craft a sick burn, and that's what comes out. Like there are some actual sick burns in this too, but that one is like it's weird, it's wild, it's iconic. I love it.
I like it. I love it too. I think it's great. I think it's funny for her character. What were the other ones you got?
The other ones I wrote down, this is a quick one, just when Mystique has kind of separated up the team and they're not sure who's who, Wolverine comes back. It's me, prove it, you're a dick. Awesome. Great. Also, benefit of that joke, you don't get to that laugh that the audience shares unless you've already done the character work leading up to it. We just talked about Rebel Moon last week. They cannot make a joke like that at the end of Rebel Moon.
No.
Because we don't know who the fuck anybody is. It's not going to land. We don't have our base reality set. The best one, the god tier joke in this movie is they are in the Statue of Liberty's torch and Cyclops is like, Storm, can you have a bolt of lightning? And Magneto goes, a bolt of lightning in a big metal dome? I thought you lived at a school.
Thought you lived at a school with Ian McKellen's like all of his condescension. I thought you were going to say the metal detector, which is my favorite joke in the whole thing. Is Wolverine, everyone quietly sneaks through and they all sneak through a metal detector and Wolverine sets it off and then he has to destroy it and then he flicks everybody off with the middle claw. It's like just like there's so many good bits in this. I also love Wolverine and Cyclops relationship where Wolverine is immediately flirting with Jean Grey. And he says to Cyclops, are you going to tell me to stay away from your girl? And Cyclops goes, if I had to do that, she wouldn't be my girl. And I remember as a kid being like, whoa, awesome. And then on his way out, he's like, by the way, stay away from my girl. I'm like, yes, this is what men do. These are the boys are being boys. I fucking love it. These are my guys doing their thing. God, so good. It's also so funny to me now this time. I noticed this where Wolverine, the fact that they use Wolverine as a character, as like an audience stand-in to introduce us to the X-Men is great. Like he wakes up in the castle, we get an introduction to the characters as it's being explained to him, but he wakes up in this weird underground lair, which I'm sure is like terrifying for him on some level because he's been experimented on, we know, in his background. And so now he's waking up in an underground bunker, got to get out of there, gets in the elevator, comes up, and he's like hiding and sneaking around the school. And there's just kids going to class. Like the thing he is so scared of is just children walking down the hallway and like going to school. And he just doesn't know what's happening yet. But then he stumbled into a classroom. It's just so funny to put him in a situation where he's literally as safe as he can be. He is just around sweet, innocent kids, and he's confused, overwhelmed by it. I don't know. So goofy.
It's amazing. It's so cool. It's such an awesome, like, iconoclastic moment to have him in like a full, like, survival mode. And there's not a paramilitary team chasing him. It's kids coming down the stairs. It's like, that's really, really neat.
Yeah.
I did like, oh, sorry.
I wrote down the line Magneto at one point says God works too slow as he's like taking all these. Awesome. I mean, this thing is loaded. This thing is loaded with great lines. Dude, every line is iconic.
They crushed it with the casting in this movie, but I think the most important casting was Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen. I think both of them are Royal Shakespeare Academy guys, right? Like true, real deal British trained actors. And it shows. This is Shakespeare. This is them playing like these really incredibly complicated characters with like very understandable perspectives. And wow, they just sell the hell out of it. Their chemistry together is incredible. You buy that these guys have a decades long friendship. You buy that each one of these guys is willing to do anything it takes to protect their I don't know, their goals, their plans, their designs for humanity. It's really amazing. I think so much of this, you mentioned that they show up and they have that first confrontation like 5 minutes into this movie. I think that really sets the tone for everything we're going to see.
It's also interesting to me because Professor X is there and he has the power. I know in X2, there's a thing where he's plugged into Cerebro and has the ability to connect to every human mind on the planet and kill them all. Like, this guy is God tier powerful. He could just show up in Washington and just like force people to do the things he wants them to do. You know, he could just like force a vote through and legalize all this stuff. And Magneto is like one of the most powerful mutants of all time. He could, you know, crush the building and everyone inside of it, and we wouldn't have to worry about this guy. He could just, you know, put like a chair through Senator Kelly's head and nothing. But they both go, they both watch, and then they both leave, and they're playing this like a more intelligent game on some level where they are not looking for world domination. They're both fighting for their causes, and they are both, it's a stealthy, like political game they're playing with each other. I mean, they're playing chess like they are at the end of the movie.
Playing chess, baby. They're trying to make a point. The bullet scene with Magneto, holy moly.
Yes.
That's so tense.
I always thought it was weird. So Magneto controls a gun. He shoots a guy. He just has a bunch of guns floating, pointing at people. One of them goes off. You think he might have shot this guy in the head, but Magneto stops the bullet, and it's right in front of his head. That guy screams like in agony, like the bullet is in his skin. And then when it drops, nothing. It's not in his skin. There's no blood. There's no anything.
He's afraid, man.
The scream is weird. I've just always thought the scream was like a weird overreaction. You know, like move your head, do something. Just it looked like a scream of like pain. And then it's like, oh, but you aren't physically in pain right now. I don't know. I always thought that was weird.
I think he's emotionally in pain. I mean, it's an iconic moment. The scream itself, as soon as I heard it, I realized that soundbite has been saved in my brain since childhood. Like I knew the exact scream. They're like, oh God.
Yeah.
I think he's just fucking terrified. I'd be terrified.
Yeah, I didn't like it as a kid, and on the rewatch, I still don't like it. It's a bad choice.
Still don't like it. Weird. All right.
Well, but that scene is amazing. That scene is amazing. I think his reaction is so goofy and silly. I also this time thought it was silly. Cerebro being used, right? The first time they used Cerebro, the first time they use Cerebro is like, Rogue's run away. I'll find her, you know? And then they go into this machine. It's so complicated. It's too powerful for Jean Grey to use. Only Professor X can. Because it connects. It's so powerful. And they do all of that to say, oh, Rogue is at the train station. And I'm like, you couldn't. She left. She's on foot. The train is probably the closest form of public transit that's available. Like, where else would she go? Like, you really needed Cerebro to determine that she was on a train at the train station trying to get out of there. Like,
we need to determine how late Walmart's open today. To Cerebro, my X-Men. You couldn't call? You can pick up the phone?
You couldn't, make 2 calls. And like, you could find this person. You don't even need her. You know? Like, Wolverine could just get on his bike and do this. And yet it's like Cerebro is doing all this stuff. And then when Rogue goes missing, Rogue is actually missing. Magneto's taken her. Professor X does not use Cerebro right away. He does not. The thought doesn't even cross his mind for a while. Like, Halle Berry's like, it's on the news. They're doing this thing. He's going to do, like, there was a lot of other stuff that happened. And then Professor X is finally like, okay, I will use Cerebro. I'll find her. And I'm like, yes, of course. You should have done that instantly. You did it instantly when she was clearly at a train station. And now she's been stolen by Magneto. You can't control Magneto's mind. You can find Rogue. Just do it. And then he's infected with the thing. It's like, story-wise, the use of Cerebro is like best for the story, but in practicality, I thought it was so goofy this time. It's so silly. Just when and how often he feels like using it. It's so goofy.
That is a little weird. I also wanted to ask about what you thought now about Magneto's plan. Do you think he knew that it was going to kill the humans going in, or do you think he knew or thought that it was just going to turn them all into mutants and everything was going to be fine?
Yeah. He has this plot to turn like every important person on the planet into a mutant because they're all conveniently meeting at the Statue of Liberty for some reason. Yes. And I think he was genuinely surprised that the senator died, and that was new information to him. And there's a moment watching it now where I'm like, is this enough? Is like this enough to convince him to stop that
Oh,
the senator
interesting.
dies? Does he believe them? Does he think
Oh,
like at what point does he make the choice? He either makes the choice that he doesn't believe them and that it'll work out fine, or he believes them and decides, I'm okay if all these people die, you know?
yeah.
But his goal
I
going
think it doesn't
in,
matter. Yeah.
but one is just murdering people, which he could do at the beginning of the movie and doesn't. Like, I don't think he
True.
just wants to murder people. I think he's doing this like undercut. I think he doesn't believe them. That's what I think. I don't think he believes them about the senator. I think he thinks his plan is going to work. And I think he thinks he's going to turn everybody into mutants. And I think he thinks that and rightly so. I mean, we make the joke all the time of like, you want to cure cancer? Like, give it to the president or something. You know, like we just need someone in
Jesus
power to
Christ.
get this. You never heard that? I feel like that
No.
joke's been made all the time. Anytime it's like, well, we have a problem we need solved. Well, we just got to infect a politician with this or something, you know? Like if the people in power had to solve this problem, it would be solved. But because it's people of no consequence like us, then these problems aren't being solved. So to make every world leader a mutant, you know, at some point you would have to. I mean, it would address things. It would solve the problems. Him
Man,
killing them would only hurt his cause.
it would have been a really funny first day back in Congress if everybody was suddenly a mutant and they're just like, so those bills, we can just get rid of those, right? The ones trying to keep mutants out of places. On the Senator Kelly thing, too, I did write down one funny exchange. Storm says that the senator came to see them, and Magneto says, he's doing even better than I could have imagined. And Storm says, he's dead. Incredible exchange. Just incredible.
So good.
Man. Yeah, there's one other thing that I thought was really weird this time around. It's just a bad look. Logan's having a nightmare. Rogue goes in to see him
Yes.
and like
So weird.
straddles him on the bed, and then he wakes up and stabs her. He's shirtless. She's wearing like a nightgown. Then everybody comes in and it's just like, this looks so bad. The like 40-year-old man and 14-year-old girl that you just found just showed up. It's just awful. I don't know how there's any world in which they're like, Wolverine's gotta go. We're gonna call the cops. But instead, everybody just snaps into action helping as though like they all immediately know there's nothing untoward going here.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seems like everyone is, or at least she's okay. So she's like up and acting. But you're right. If you find her in bed with the teacher, then you gotta ask questions.
You gotta.
Like that's a change that would definitely not fly today. They wouldn't do that at all.
Yeah, it's just weird. It was the whole thing was a little strange.
Yeah. It's one thing if it would be like in the infirmary or something, or
yeah, like somewhere.
It can't be
like,
his room.
No, it's just a gross look.
Yeah. My favorite thing about the X-Men, which I know I've definitely brought up on the pod before, is like, you know, DC is telling the story of gods, Marvel is telling the story of humans and like human struggles, but even the MCU is like gods compared to the X-Men. The X-Men are just human beings who have like one quirky thing about them. You know, There's no Superman. I mean, in the comics, there are characters that are way overpowered, but for the most part, there's no Superman. There's a guy with heat vision. There's a guy with cold breath. There's a guy with indestructible skin. There's a guy who can fly, but like the sum of their parts are always greater than them as individuals. And I noticed even at the end, like, how do they get Wolverine to stop this guy? You know, they don't just throw him up there. It's like Jean Grey has to stabilize him. Storm's using wind. And then Cyclops like takes the shot, which by the way, I've got a shot. I'm taking it. I always thought that was so cool as a kid. And then he snipes Magneto. Like it is a complete team effort in order to stop this thing. And it's so simple and so dumb, but that's what we need from these teams. And it's why something like Rebel Moon will always be trash in comparison.
Man,
Yeah.
yeah, I love that. I love that thing that you told me one time where it takes multiple X-Men to make one Thor. And it's great. You see that when they're escaping from the Statue of Liberty torch too. Jean has to like levitate the visor over to Cyclops, and then Cyclops opens his eyes and it blows the hole in the wall. Like, it's great.
Yeah.
So cool.
They all need each other to do stuff, except Storm is just a straight up god who just controls lightning and flies around.
Yeah,
But everyone else like needs to work together to get stuff done, and it's great. I love it.
it's really
It's the best
cool.
thing about
Man,
the X-Men.
I was so happy that this movie held up. When you pitched doing this movie, I was honestly a little bit worried because I was like, I don't want to realize this movie's bad. I remember as a kid, just like you said, like I liked X-Men 2 so much that I kind of stopped watching X-Men 1. I probably haven't seen this movie any good. Boy, it's probably been more than 20 years. And man, oh man, is it good. It is so good.
I agree. Like this movie's better now.
Yeah.
Better as an adult. It's great. But you're right. I think I was the same way. I think X2 came out and I just stopped watching the first one.
To be fair, too, I had worn that VHS tape down to the bones. Like,
oh yeah,
that strip was barely hanging on, that little magnetic tape.
And then I watched X3 a lot.
I'm not going to judge you.
It was so bad, but I just like seeing all the guys. As a kid, I was just like, I want to see all the people. I want to see all the mutants, get this Senator Kelly off my screen, get me more cameos from Girls Who Can Walk Through Walls, give me a tease of Jubilee.
I just like Kelsey Grammer's Beast. Listener, what do you think? Does X-Men 1 hold up? Do you have any other thoughts on the X-Men in general that you want to share with us? Let us know. Send us an email, nerdy430@gmail.com. Nerdy is spelled out. 4 is spelled out. 30 is just the number 30@gmail.com. We'll read it on the show. We promise. And you know what? We'll be back here again next week. I don't think we know what we're doing next week yet, do we, Tim?
No, but we're excited about it.
Oh, we sure are. We got some big releases coming up. Argyle. I'm hearing good things about it. Maybe it'll be Argyle. We'll see.
It'll be Argyle. Maybe next week will be Argyle.
Maybe.
Whatever our next pod is, if it's not Argyle, we should start it by like, this is not Argyle.
Yeah, we're going to have to concede on that. Or we can say this is Argyle.
This is Argyle. And then talk about, X-Men 2.
Yeah.
Or actually do Argyle. Limitless possibilities. It's like combinations of X-Men near limitless.
Near limitless.
Or 12. I don't know.
Yeah, it's either near limitless or 12. Now we're starting to sound like
16.
mild calculus homework.
It's 4 times 4.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.